Hey mate, how are you, man?
Good. How are you? Busy, I see.
Yeah, I'm busy with a lot of different things. One thing that I'm addressing is Screen Actors Guild has stripped us of what's called senior performer eligibility. So let me explain what that is, okay?
Sure.
When I first joined the union in 1977, they said, "Listen, you're going to be so happy when you turn 65 because if you have enough credits, you need 20, I have 30. And if you make enough money, I've made the money, you will have health insurance for life. You won't ever have to worry about, you won't even have to work. You'll have health insurance. Not that I don't want to work, but you'll be covered." They stripped us of senior performer eligibility, and now you have to make $28,000 in a calendar year, which is from September to June, and it all has to be on camera. Residuals don't even count.
Huh.
Do you know how difficult that is
Yeah.
for some of us? So we're filing a class action lawsuit and we'll just writing
What?
letter.
Why they? Is it that's that they don't have the money, or they don't want to spend the money?
It's all these rich people at the top.
Yeah.
Ever since we merged with that was the worst fucking decision, merging with After. And the union has been selling us up the river. It used to be if you did like a Law and Order
Yeah.
and you got $7,500 for the show, 10 days of work, you'd get a residual for $7,500. Now it maxes out at 3,600. That's more than half cut.
Jeez.
And that's like the begin. Then you get, I can show you right now a stack of checks from Oz, a TV series I was on, 81 cents, $2.16, 14 cents. I've got residual checks for 1 cent.
Yeah.
We are, we got to turn this country around, man. We are getting,
Yeah. Well, I always
it
felt
is,
like.
it is labor and not cap. Labor is prior to and more important than capital.
Do you do you feel like? I mean, I only had experiences with SAG after for one project, and I don't ever intend to go again unless things change. But do you feel like the problem is rooted in their most exposed sort of talking heads are ultra famous people who don't even really need to be in the union? Do you think that it makes sense to have a separate union for performers who aren't A-listers or don't live in some Beverly Hills mansion?
My understanding is that several very famous, very wealthy people sided with the producers
Yeah.
and pushed this through because they don't have a fucking thing to worry about.
Yeah, they're probably
They
producers
won't spend the
themselves.
money they earn
Yeah.
in 10 of their children's lives. And meanwhile, how am I supposed to get? I've had three auditions all year. How am I supposed to make $28,000?
Yeah.
I'm infuriated. Anyway, I don't want to spell on to you. How,
Well, I
how are
mean, this
you?
is important topical stuff, which
Yeah.
will inevitably affect the industry in the next few years, probably the next
Oh
decade.
my God.
And I didn't know what was going on. I don't really follow the unions, but it is something that I recognized immediately that I've always thought maybe there should be a separate union where once you're making a certain income, if you're making millions of dollars off a single project, maybe you shouldn't have sway over how that union operates, because you're going to, because immediately that individual is going to be out of touch with the reality. Um, and some of the best unions are run by people who never lost touch with sort of the reality of economics as it concerns the people that they're working with and working for.
The blue collar.
Yeah, yeah. And that's going to have to be the approach. The problem is it's show business, and show business is a whole sort of cultural monster that where wealth is everything. Wealth matters, and if you don't have wealth, fuck you. Uh, it's just,
That's basically it.
yeah. Can I do an intro?
Yeah.
All right. This badass actor that I have on the podcast today has been in a whole lot of stuff, as you've probably figured out. He's been in a lot of TV. He was in Crime Story. I don't know if you guys remember Crime Story, but their intro song was a redo of Runaway, that oldie but goodie. He was in The Warriors, famously got fired from The Warriors, which he's told that story countless times. Don't worry, I won't make you retell it. My ingress into his resume was The Thing. And recently I watched your Buffy episode. Because I'm a huge Buffy fan.
How
so,
funny.
You're the guy that was accusing her of murdering her fellow Slayer. That's so awesome.
Right.
But I actually met you through Steve. Steve brought me to your off-Broadway show about, you'd done a play on the creation of a novel called The Confederacy of Dunces, which I have on my shelf back there.
That's correct.
And I was blown away by it. I'm like, all right, yeah, cool. I think at some point I will probably have a podcast. I'm going to have you on the podcast. And almost a year later, here we are.
Thank you. You've seen me on screen and on stage.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And yeah, as a sci-fi horror guy, of course I know who you are.
The Thing.
The Thing. So Steve Cohen, who was on the podcast 2 weeks ago, he's always talking about the
Steve.
Warriors, which is so indicative of a native New Yorker, because every native New Yorker I know is obsessed with the Warriors. I never got it.
Yeah.
But the Thing is my gateway drug. So
it's the intellectual man's horror.
Yes.
And obviously a far better experience for me personally.
I can imagine that it was more creatively rewarding.
Yeah, it was, John Carpenter is a great director, and he creates a beautiful atmosphere for actors to work in. He makes it fun to go to work. You work sometimes very long hours, but it's like being at a party. Go to a party every day and have a good time. And Kurt Russell, who's been in the business since he was a kid, this is like rolling off a log for him, you know what I mean? Not that he isn't professional, not that anybody wasn't ever 100% on target, but they just somehow, John, he manages to make it fun. I don't know how he does it. I talked to him on the phone the other day because I'm going to be directing my first feature film called Target in the spring. And I said, John, can you give me some advice? Well, I call him, and, he calls me back and he goes, rumor has it that you're going to be directing a movie. Like, just his whole approach to things is like a build up to a laugh. You feel like you're getting set up for a joke. And we had a good talk, and he gave me some very solid pointers. I'm so fortunate and so blessed to have been, well, in both movies, really. In The Warriors, although, it was not a great experience by my own doing.
Yeah.
Not a great experience, but they're two cult classics. I mean, guys that are much more successful than I am can't lay claim to being in not one, but two movies that changed the course of cinematic history, if you ask me.
I mean, that's sort of my thinking on it, too, is I've always, for the past 20 years that I've been making films and trying to make films simultaneously, I've always said that I would rather do one cult classic than anything else. but that's so hard. You can't predict what becomes that. And I think that's why it's so interesting that you managed to nail two. And
I'm just a lucky guy.
you know, the thing about having fun on set, I'd like to unpack that for a little bit, because
Sure.
I'd read that Bill Hader won't sign on to anything if he's not guaranteed that it's going to be fun. How important is that to the creative process?
Oh, it's so crucial. There's a way to do good, serious, hard, disciplined work and make it fun.
Yeah.
Because if it's any good, you're discovering things and you're surprised by things and you're actually emotionally having a transaction with someone, and it's infectious, and the crew and the cast and everybody watching gets this kind of thrill of being part of something special is going to happen here. And you know I've had that experience a lot. I had it with Tom Fontana on Oz and Dean Winters, and I had it with Kurt on The Thing. I've had it with a lot of projects that I've been on. The one that you saw with Linda Pearl, The Tools, on stage, um, it was it can be fun because that's why we got into it.
Yeah.
Nobody wakes up and goes, "Hey, I think I'm going to be a movie star." They wake up and they go, "What do I like doing?" Well, I really dig performing. I'm me personally, Tom. I'm a natural born performer. You put me on stage, I become like electricity. Like I'm the fucking Mick Jagger of the acting world. It just is fun. Again, not to discount, and I'm an acting teacher also, as you know, and I'm fierce with my students. I mean, fiercely disciplined and almost punitive at times if they don't have it letter perfect, especially if you're doing Shakespeare, because most of it was written in iambic pentameter. You add a syllable or leave a syllable out, the ear goes, "What?
Yeah.
What did you do there?" And if I'm not on that, what kind of a teacher am I? What am I teaching them? There are people that come out of some of these colleges with MFAs, they don't even know what iambic pentameter is. It's unconscionable. It's why we have this impeachment. Why? Because of education, because people don't know anything anymore. The school systems have deteriorated. The children are not learning anything anymore. People are afraid to teach and afraid to learn.
Actually have I had a note here. This would be perfect ingress into it because I found that a lot of my peers in independent film don't know the difference between all the different sort of the modes of acting. I guess what do you like the Strasberg method or I was wondering
Okay,
if
so
you could
now
break
you're
some of
talking
this down.
about different
Yeah,
approaches to the craft.
yeah. Can you
So
give us
there's
like
the
a
method.
brief 101? Yeah,
Sure. There's the method, which was invented by a man named Konstantin Stanislavski around the turn of the century in Russia. Stanislavski was a very wealthy man, and he brought all his friends to his big, gigantic, you know, palatial estate and made them very warm and comfortable and fed them. And he loved doing musicals and he loved doing plays, and he just took care of everyone. And then one day he said, "Well, I have to come up with of what a musician would consider arpeggiating scales." Right?
yeah.
So that's an arpeggiated half of a scale. And Stanislavski was like, that would be the equivalent of that. So we started working with a thing called action. That is, how do I make the other person feel? You know, say good morning, but he's just stolen your last biscuit and you have no breakfast. You know, good morning, Eric. He's just, you know, giving you $100 that you need to pay the rent. Good morning, Eric. It's completely different, right? So that's Stanislavski. He invented that method and used it to develop the interior life of the character. See, up until then, acting had been primarily like opera. It was all, they even had numbered gestures. So if you were supposed to cry, they gave you a physical position and they numbered it. That's how they taught acting from the outside. Like opera, you know, very external is the only word I can think of. He became concerned with the interior life of the actor. And Lee Strasberg went over to Russia with, you know, Stella Adler and Uta Hagen, and they came back with it, and Bobby Lewis, and they made it their own. They made their own. They stole it from him, used their own imprint, and called it the method. And that's the first thing, right? Then an offshoot of that was a brilliant actor by the name of Sanford Meisner. And people don't often realize that he was a brilliant actor first. He was so good, like no matter what part he played in the plays, in the group theater, he would get ovations. He'd stop the play. He was so great. That was Sanford Meisner. And he developed a thing called the repetition technique, where you say, here, I'll do it with you. Say, repeat these words. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead, do it.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Eric.
Good
Good morning,
morning,
Eric.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Eric.
Eric. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Eric.
And you do that for 15 minutes until you're ready to lose your fucking mind. And then all your defenses collapse and the mask drops and you become who you really are. That's the Meisner system. Then, you know, you have other offshoots, like there's Boleslavski, who was a Polish director that was interested in the physical, like you had to be in peak physical condition. No props, no sets, no lights, no costume. He called it, you know, the impossible theater. And, you know, it was just raw, just no, you had nothing to, there was no illumination, there was no lighting, there was no costume, there was no props. There was just you and the text and the other actor. So there's that system. Then there's the Thomas G. Waite system, which is the meeting of a crisis and dealing with it. That's my definition of that. And it's completely unique and you know, individual to me, and it's born out of 45 years of experience as a professional actor. And I start everyone off with Shakespeare. I sort of steal that from Juilliard, to be honest. We started out with Shakespeare. They drop you in the deep ends of the pool, and then you kind of work your way back to contemporary work, and then you find your place in the middle. So that's how I kind of approach it. But that's your basic 101 in approaches to.
Is there a have you ever seen in all of your years a difference between the different methods as it concerns like does one method work better on film versus stage?
Well, you know, I heard Paul Newman say there is no method. There is only whatever works for you. And he's right about that. I have found that when I'm doing film, you have a lot more time. You shoot 3 and 7/8 pages in a day on a professional, big studio film, maybe 4, 5. Nothing like TV where you shoot 10, 12 pages a day. You're just moving, running, and gunning all day long because it's got to get done.
Yeah.
You don't really have much time to use the method when you're doing TV. You just sort of have to hit the mark and be as truthful as you can be. Film, you get to take your time and you can actually immerse yourself in the character. On stage, I find the method can be useful, but a Pacino is a big method actor. Al is, he was trained by Strasberg. He loved Lee, and Al used still uses much of what Lee taught him. Sorry, I lost you there.
Oh, I see you.
You still see me?
Yeah.
See, I got to get a new computer, and I was going to do that today. And all this happened with the heat. So, wow, this is unbelievable. Well, you can still see me, but I can't see you.
Yeah, it seems to be working. You're not even skipping, so it's still running.
That's really crazy. Anyway, I'll try to keep going, and
Yeah, you can still hear me though, right?
yeah, that's the most important thing,
Yeah.
correct?
Um, can we talk about the business side of things for a sec? Since we kind of
Sure.
started out there, and I'll link to some of the videos I'm going to reference. That way, we don't have to recount whole stories that you've recounted 1,000 times. But in one video, you do recount your Warriors incident, and you talked about how you didn't go through an agent to deal with your problems. And I was wondering if you could talk about why that is. Why is it important to only go through agents when dealing with your problems on set, and how does each party benefit from that structure?
Okay. So everything is specific unto the circumstance, right? So in that particular instance, I was like maybe the next James Dean, at least in my dreams. And Paramount had put me under option. So I was kind of someone that they had their eye on that might, make it really big. Like the last people to be put under option were Robert Redford and Al Pacino and Dustin Hoffman. And I was in very good company. And the director and I didn't see eye to eye the way the movie was going. And he was under tremendous stress and pressure because his last 2 films, especially his last film, The Driver, did not do well at the box office. So they were breathing down this guy's neck in ways I couldn't comprehend. And I was not sensitive to his feelings. And for that, I was wrong. Secondly, I had no business disturbing the man in the middle of a shoot with my acting complaints. What I should have done in that situation is, since I was a big player I was one of the stars of the movie. I mean, until I got fired. But like for example, they tried to put all 8 of us in one trailer. You imagine this, 8 guys in one trailer in the middle of the summer? I'm like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. And then, because I complained about that, it's like, well, he's the guy that complains all the time. When, what I should have done is call my agent and say, could you deal with this? You're getting 10% of quite a lot of money, as I recall, even for back then. And he would have been glad to do it for me. It was my ego. Yeah. It was me thinking, I have to take charge of everything and I have to, run the show. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and one of the symptoms of active alcoholism is a person with grandiosity, an overinflated sense of themselves. And I suffered terribly from that, because I was like a poor street kid, sleeping on a park bench. And then the next thing I knew, limousines were picking me up. You know what I mean? The change, the adjustment was so abrupt for me. And I had no humility, and I paid a price. I'm still paying a price for that.
Yeah.
And that's why if there's any, young kids out there, if there are any actors out there on the verge or trying to get into the business, you know, humility is a far more powerful tool to get what you want than grandiosity. Humility is, well, it's a lost virtue in our society today. Especially, this guy Trump is the exact opposite of humility. Joe Biden is a humble guy.
Yeah.
Will he be the greatest president that ever? I don't think he knows or cares. I think he's just trying to do the job.
Yeah.
What happened to just trying to do the job? And I think a country very much reflects its leader. Its leader very much reflects its people. And this, circles back to what we said about lack of education. People don't read anymore. They just pick up their phone and, flash through, get the highlights, I admonish against that. And with regard to the business, the business has changed so drastically from when I started. I remember reading a story about the late, great Tom Petty, who was a hero of mine, I love his music. I loved every song he'd ever written, and his singing voice, his playing, his song. He got really good in Florida, knew that he was good, drove to the West Coast, and walked into every record label in Los Angeles and said, "Hi, my name's Tom Petty. Here's my demo tape. Take a listen." And everybody wanted to sign him.
I respect that.
When I was a kid, you go to the office and you knock on the door and say, "Can I get an appointment?" And they say, "No, forget it." You come back the next day. "It's me again. Could you please let me come in and meet you?" "Get out of here. You're a pain in the ass." You come back the next day. "Please, come on. Would you let me please meet Jeff Hunter?" All right. We'll give you an appointment. Come back and you can't do that now because everything's electronic and everything is. So that's why film has become so important, and the way you look on film. And then again, back to education. Who's writing anything of any value that you can put on a reel that's going to spark an agent or a manager's interest,
Yeah. Well, the writing in the film industry is certainly, it's hard to get good writers hired, which is something I plan on talking about in a future episode with some writers. But the Tom Petty, I love that Tom Petty bit because, when I was in film school, I was cold writing studio executives. Like, I'm the next shit. Like, and I got a lot of flack for that. Like, cold writing executive. I'm like, of course you do.
Good for you.
Yeah, I love that kind of, that sort of attitude. I think that's the best way to go into it all.
Well, one must be confident, but not arrogant.
Right. Exactly.
And confidence comes with repetition. Confidence comes with rehearsal. Confidence comes with doing it again and again and again. I didn't know you were a filmmaker. So I'm directing my first film. I've rewritten this thing at least 25 times since March. And I probably will take another pass at it again before we start shooting. Writing, as Ernest Hemingway said, is rewriting. And, it's that capacity to repeat, just keep doing it over and over and over again. And for an actor, why that's important is if you do 8 shows a week, well, there's a guy from Iowa that just paid, $150 to come and see you. He doesn't care that you have a hangover. He wants the same performance that you gave on opening night when the critics were there. You know, how do you come up with that? You have to have a
Yeah.
technique. You have to have the capacity to recreate the same thing every time and make it seem like you never did it before.
Would you say it's important for actors to have some level of writing in their background?
Yes, absolutely. Writing and reading.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than a stupid actor. When I'm auditioning actors for, a project, I look for two things. Are they tough? Because it's going to be tough. Doing a play in New York or any place else for that matter, you're going to be in the trenches, man. Or if I'm directing a movie, I've only directed two short films. This is my first feature. It's going to be tough. You're going to be in the trenches out there. Sometimes the conditions are difficult. Sometimes it's cold. Sometimes it's hot. Sometimes you have no money. Sometimes, come on in. And so the two qualities I look for are you tough and are you smart? Have you read? Do you know who Tolstoy is?
Yeah.
Do you know what War and Peace is? Do you know what the Count of Monte Cristo is? Do you know what Shakespeare, that he was the greatest writer of the think of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that have written throughout the years from beginning of the written word, and he was the top. Anybody that's ever written anything will tell you they tip their hat to the man, like Bach was to music, Shakespeare was to writing.
Yeah, I remember in my undergrad, I had an independent study called the critical and cultural context of Herman Melville's Moby Dick or something like that. And I just studied Moby Dick for 4 credits.
Hold on one
Sure,
second.
sure.
Hey, Jeff, can you turn your radio off?
And basically,
Sorry. So Herman Melville's,
Moby Dick.
yeah,
And
great book.
he
Another
was
genius,
he was a
Melville.
genius who was so clearly inspired by his collection of Shakespeare's plays. He had one of the first published collections of everything that Shakespeare wrote.
I didn't
And
know that.
yeah, and he wrote extensively about how he would just, if he felt blocked in terms of his writing, he would just go back into Shakespeare and come out with new ideas.
Oh,
So,
oh, he really is the source of inspiration. I mean, I've was it 2,600 words he invented. Um, uh, and the first one, of course, to say, but that to people considering suicide, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. 500 years ago or more. And you go there to Stratford, there's a whole town, and the whole town exists and flourishes and thrives in every shop and two theaters because of what? One guy. They all have work because of one guy who wrote 37 plays, 146 sonnets, 3 lyric poems, did it all by hand and died by 52.
nobody has anything on
Greatest.
him. Nobody has anything on him. Oh my goodness. Just hearing you put it that way is just like, uh, what's the
That's why
point?
I teach my actors. That's why I make them start out with the hard stuff. And some of them are like, they look at me like, I can't even read this, let alone memorize it. You
Yeah.
will. Trust me, you will.
That alone should be the lesson in how to be humble. You'll never be this, so there's no point in being a dick about what you're doing now.
There you go. There you go.
Aside from Shakespeare, do you have any contemporary? What kind of shows do you watch? Do you binge? Do you watch films?
I just watched this wonderful thing on Netflix called Kingdom about MMA fighting. Now, I don't care for MMA. I don't even watch boxing. I loathe violence. I'm a love child from the 70s. But this guy, Byron Belasco, I believe his name is, he developed. So, wow. Okay, thank you. It's a good thing I love the cold. All right, see you later, Jeff. Thanks.
You're not getting heat for a while?
No, the heat's off in the building.
Jeez, bad timing.
Yeah, that's why I do actually really love the cold, but that's another story. Anyway, this kid Byron Blasco created, I don't know if he's a kid, but a TV series called Kingdom with a brilliant actor named Frank Grillo and the Nick Jonas from the Jonas Brothers is in it, and another young man, I think his name's Jonathan Zachariah. But it's all about and there's another brilliant actor in it too, and I can't think of his name, and I forgive me if anyone's listening. I just didn't catch it, but the show, like again, here's a world that I know nothing nor care anything about, but you're so drawn into the family. It's a family story. It's a dad who's divorced his wife, and his wife is a hooker, and she's a drug addict, and one of the kids becomes a drug addict. And then there's the fights that they train for, and the arduous physical training that these actors must have put themselves through to be in the physical condition that they were in. It's just awe-inspiring. And the story really escalates and finally culminates in a tremendous moment of poignant awareness of the main character having a cognizant realization of his failure as a man, his inability to listen to his son when his son needed him the most. And by gosh, it really pulled me in. I'm sure that we'll be hearing many things from both Frank Grillo and Byron Belasco and all the actors. Joanna Going is in it. She's a marvelous actress. It was just, that was really a treat, because this pandemic, I mean, you can't go anywhere, you can't see any plays. So I really enjoyed News of the World, the new Paul Greengrass film with Tom Hanks.
I haven't seen that yet. It's on my list.
It's quite good. And what's really fun is King of Staten Island.
Oh yeah, yeah. I live out there, so or out here.
I laughed. I laughed. So that, and of course Borat. Borat made me laugh when Giuliani has his hand down his pants and gets caught. We were trying to eat pizza, and my buddies, and watch the movie. We laughed so hard we had to stop the movie so we didn't choke to death. That guy Borat's a freaking genius.
And I think that movie matters more now than it did when he first did it, because everything that he was exposing years ago has come to a head with the Capitol riots and all that. That's what it was all coming to. That's the commentary.
And he saw it. That's what I think Ibsen was asked, what is a poet? A poet is a person with a vision. They see it before we do.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this guy Borat does.
Did you ever see, going back to the King of Staten Island, did you ever see the SNL sketches where Pete Davidson is just ripping on his hometown? He's just ripping on Staten Island. The King of Staten Island is all that much better if you go onto YouTube and you look up Pete Davidson Staten Island SNL. It's solid gold because him and the other host, one of the other hosts from Saturday Night Live, are both from Staten Island. One's a pretty boy, but then one's Pete Davidson. And they compare and contrast how the Staten Island Advance treats them. And it's wonderful and marvelous, and it's almost like the special feature for that movie that you need.
I was, before this pandemic hit, I was gearing up for a big gig at this club in Staten Island that's supposed to be the most popular club in the whole borough, and it's packed. And the guy was so excited to have me because he was a big Thing fan, and the band was going to really actually make some money, and we were gearing up for that, and then everything got shut down. I think it's called Uggs. That's the name of it, I think.
Yeah,
But
I don't really do much out here except leave every day. Um, but yeah, I had right before the pandemic, I had tickets to Hamilton, which I never got to use.
oh,
That hurt. That broke my heart.
he's another brilliant dude. That Manuel Miranda.
Yeah,
Oh my God, this kid is he's just off the charts. I mean, his talent is extraordinary. One of the guys that invested in my film called me and he said, all right, I'll give you a little bit of money. Because I had to I'm cobbling together little chunks of money to shoot a $70,000 film. It really should be 2.5 million. Anyway, we're going to do it anyway.
yeah.
But one of the guys, before he sent me the money, he said, "What? Wait a minute, before I send you this, I want you to sit there and tell me, this guy, Lin Manuel, or whatever his name is, Hamilton, are you going to tell me that he's in the same class with Ibsen and Shakespeare?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "I don't believe it." I said, "Chip, I'm telling you, the guy is, you listen to those songs, they're freaking brilliant."
Yeah.
And imagine going into a pitch meeting saying, "I'm going to do a historical, docudrama about Alexander Hamilton, only I'm going to make everybody black and Hispanic and put hip hop music to it." I mean, can you imagine the investors going, "What?"
Yeah.
And they did it. I think it was the Public Theater that gave him his first shot, I think. So God bless them. God bless anybody trying to create anything.
Yeah.
You may get there, you may not get there. It doesn't matter. It just only matters that you have an idea and a dream and you chase it and you give everything you have for it, because it's the only thing worth living for. I believe that work is the point of life.
Yeah.
I believe that, look, I've had children and been married, and I adore my children, and they love me too, and they're great. But the reason to live for man is to work, because through work you improve yourself.
Yeah. I love that, and that's been my thesis on this podcast over and over again: is live to create. And
That's
seems like
beautiful.
we agree, and I think we should go out on that.
We are creators. Yeah,
Yeah, we're
we are
creators.
creators. Thanks so much for having me, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I know you're busy. If you ever want to come on to talk about your film or promote your film, get it, for anything, because I know how hard it's going to be not only to make this film but to get people to sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
Just feel free to reach out to me. You
Oh, I
have
appreciate
a
that, Eric.
pass on here anytime you want.
Thank you, my brother. I really appreciate that. Peace and love,
Peace and love, man. Bye.
All right, out.